I want to pet cats and play with string, but I'm all out of string. Oh! Good afternoon, my fellow monks. I hope everyone is keeping the peace on this cloudy Friday afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of my series, Meditation with Vinyl. Now, last week we talked about the amazing Bad Religion album, Suffer, and I'm going to leave a link to that video in the description below. But today we're going to be talking about another classic record, at least in my opinion, from the mid-90s punk scene. Skate punk, hardcore punk, you name it. These guys are a little bit of everything. Now these guys come from California, so they're part of that SoCal punk scene. But they're a little bit different, as you're about to find out. But I'm keeping the punk rock chain a-chugging, and I'm talking about one of my favorite bands of the California punk scene that isn't Bad Religion or The Offspring, but they are indeed on Fat Records, which is of course owned and run by Fat Mike of NoFX. And I am of course talking about the criminally underrated, one of the best bands in California punk, the excellent, amazing Strung Out. And as you guys saw, this is their first record, Another Day in Paradise. This is their very first album, all the way back in 1994. And if you guys couldn't tell, this is a different beast of a record. Judging by the cover, it has this very post-apocalyptic imagery, and the title, Another Day in Paradise, is very much a tongue-in-cheek kind of satirical take on that phrase, oh, another day in paradise. But it takes it to a whole nother level by just being so satirical and just being like, yeah, another day in paradise, but this is a paradise, but a post-apocalyptic paradise. And that motif is carried on through the back. And what I love about the back too is that it's just a pure orange color, no frills, just a track listing and a photo of the band in the mid-90s. And the version of this album that I chose to buy was the 2014 reissue that was actually remixed and remastered by Ryan Green. And they used the original analog tape that was done in 94 to re-record this record and remix it. And this album sounds fantastic on vinyl. Now, it isn't 180 grams, but as you're about to see, it's still a pretty thick piece of vinyl. And I think from now on, at least for albums that I really love like this, I'm going to keep them in the plastic and just make a slit in there so that way I can keep them fresher for longer. One thing about Fat Records that I've noticed that they don't do when they ship you records, this is actually my very first Fat Record purchase, but as far as I know, these guys do not ship their records in polylined paper sleeves. I actually had to supply my own because the one it came with was just like this, but had nothing in it. And if you guys saw behind me, it is kind of storming today. We're having thunderstorm and flash flood warnings here where I live. So if you guys live anywhere near me, make sure you're careful and don't slip on those puddles. And I was saying before, this isn't a very thick record. Like, it's thick enough, but I don't think it's 180 grams. I think it's maybe 140, 150. And as you can see, put it over here, we have side A. This is a numbered one, there's a lettered one. I think it's funny, you have either side A, B, or 1, 2. They cannot decide what they want to do. Every artist is different. There's side A and side B. And of course, this is a clear black pressing. I could have went for the pressing that came out a few years ago. That is a splatter blue and white to celebrate Fat Record's 25th anniversary. I believe the first 3 Strung Out records were actually pressed that way in a certain colored variant. But I opted to go for the black version because I think it's going to sound just a little bit better. And I'm not sure what mix that pressing uses, so I just figured I'd be safe than sorry and buy a black version. And plus, if you go to the website, I'm going to post a screenshot right here. Like, look at the price for these albums. They are damn cheap, especially for obscure bands like Strung Out, and especially on a more independent label. As big as Fat Records is in the punk scene, there's still a pretty big independent label, just like Epitaph, which I talked about in my last video. Now, just a few moments ago, I was complaining about what the record did not include. But I have to take that back because I am more than happy with what they did include, and that is a full fold-out lyric sheet. Now, as you can see, You have the Strung Out logo, which is their de facto logo that they use for most of their album covers, or at least the early ones, and some of the newer ones, and the album title. And you have this really weird photo that's like saturated of a family having fun and celebrating under this, in front of this like piss yellow background. It's really strange. But the best part to me, besides the inside, is the back. I mean, look at this back photo here. I love it. It's a photo collage. And I think it's just great on all these early photos of the guys from 93, 94 just having fun and recording the album. And what you get inside is a full fold-out lyric sheet. So you have lyrics to every song. And fun fact, originally this album did not include the last track, 14 Days. That was actually added for this vinyl/CD release. And of course it's on streaming now too. And I think what makes this album special too is the production. It's one of those albums that has a really nice crunch to it. When you put on the turntable, even if you listen to it with headphones or CD or whatever, you can definitely tell that it was produced by someone special. And it was of course produced by Fat Mike, the owner of Fat Records. He doesn't produce a lot of records, but he thought that Strung Out was special when he first saw them play back in like the early 90s. And they were actually one of the first bands that he signed on. And to this day, they're one of the more unique bands on the Fat Records label. Of course, the band consists of Jason Cruz on vocals. And I think Jason Cruz has one of the most unique vocals in punk history. He's not very whiny or more on the high-pitched side like a lot of punk bands, but he is more on the raspy, gruff vocal while being able to scream with the best of them. And his vocal style really suits this kind of music. This fast, more metallic style of skate/hardcore punk that Strung Out would be known to deliver from this album going forward. And Rob Ramos and Jake Kelly really add this nice crunchy guitar tone to these albums. Just play their asses off in this band, and they just showcase what this band is all about with their crunchy riffs and their fast solos. And another thing I love about this band is that they play a lot of great guitar solos. A few punk bands are against, a lot of times punk bands are against doing guitar solos because they're very much like, you know, old time rock and roll, and very much like prog rock, and just like they're kind of against that. But the thing I like about the 90s punk scene is they kind of got back to doing guitar solos again, and Strung Out are some of the best guitar solos in the business, bar none. I have Jordan Burns on drums, who I think he got replaced by somebody else in the later years, but his drumming on these early albums is just, so fantastic. His drumming style is so fast and aggressive and just so pounding and heavy. It just matches the style they're doing so well. And I can't not mention the amazing bass work of Jim Cherry. And not only was Jim Cherry an excellent bass player, he was also their main lyricist on their first 3 albums. So this album, Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues, which is a mouthful to say, and Twisted by Design, the last album that he featured on back in '99, all excellent lyrics. He was a huge force to be reckoned with in the punk scene. He was second only to Tony Sly from No Use for a Name in terms of being a great songwriter and a great storyteller. And I want to say a quick rest in peace to both Jim Cherry and Tony Sly. Unfortunately, they are no longer with us, and they are sorely missed in the punk music scene. And now you will see, just like Bad Religion, these guys are not afraid to tackle important issues. There are songs across the whole discography about the economy, politics, human rights, the environment. Just, they have a whole wide range of topics that they talk about. But they're also not afraid to get personal, which is something that a lot of pop punk and emo artists would be doing in the mid to late 90s going forward into the 2000s. And now before I get talking about the album proper, I did want to say that Strung Out were on a couple of previous labels, and they did release music under those labels. And if you want to listen to that early stuff before they released this, Fat Records put out an excellent compilation called The Skinny Years Before We Got Fat, which is an excellent compilation album compiling all that early work into one album, and I think it's fantastic, and I would definitely go check it out if you want to see where these guys began before they were on Fat. And right when you hit play on this record, the first thing you hear this distorted radio or TV broadcast, and then you can hear these drums slowly fading in to the foreground. So all you hear is radio broadcast, and it's like do 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 do. You hear this drum slowly building, and then you hear Jason Cruz. He's like ah, and then you just hear the riff come in. The drums are fast. The riff is heavy. It has a start and stop quality to it while the drums are going, and then finally Jason Cruz comes in with his signature harsh vocal, and it hooks you right in. I love Population Control. This is one of those excellent openers to really kick off an album. This might be my favorite opener of theirs, but that might actually go to Firecracker off of the next album, but this is pretty damn close. I love lyrics like, "You're my God, you're my TV. You control what I say, you control what I hear, don't lie, I see." And getting back to how great of an opener this is, I really feel like this is a great showcase of Strung Out as a whole. If you want to know what Strung Out is about, I would just play this first song. It's both metal, has punk qualities, it's fast, it's speedy, it has heavy riffing, and then that solo that comes in towards the middle. It's short, but it's also sweet. It's very reminiscent of a early punk guitar solo, but just turn up to 11, and so fast and aggressive with the drums in the background and the bass too. I love the bass in this song. It really gets a chance to shine in this new mix. It's a little muffled in the early mix, but Ryan Green did a great job of bringing everything up, and it makes everything sound like it's on a level playing field. So you can hear the fast bass, you can hear the drums, you can hear everything, and I think this opening is just a great way to start this album off. What else can I say? And going from Population Control, we have the amazing second track, Lost. And what I love about this song is another fast, speedy song, but the lyrics that Jason Cruz is portraying here. He's portraying someone like he's been told all his life that America is land of the free, land of the brave, and all this stuff, and it's where this country's so wealthy. But when he looks around his whole life, he's just seen nothing but poverty. So there's a little bit of a hypocrisy there with the American dream. And I love seeing his perspective on things, and Jim Cherry's perspective on things. Because again, Jim Cherry wrote a lot of the lyrics for this album, so you really see his perspective. And it's almost like the Rush dynamic where Neil, the drummer, was writing lyrics, but Geddy was singing them. He was portraying them in his own way. Jason Cruz is taking Jim's lyrics and portraying them in his own way. And I think that's excellent that Jason was able to do that, and do it so convincingly. And the speedy assault continues with tracks like In Harm's Way and Drag Me Down, the latter of which being one of my favorite songs of all time. I think In Harm's Way is just an excellent song. It's a little bit on the poppy side, but still fast. I love the lyrics. It has this little bit of a reggae breakdown in the middle, and then it just gets fast again with a frantic, heavy solo, and it's a beautiful song. And I think it's just one of those songs that, again, showcases them being a little bit different. Like, they can be poppy, but they can still be fast and aggressive at the same time. And I love tracks like Talking to Myself and Broken, showing a little more personal side to this band. These guys aren't just this political punk band. They're all about just social issues, and they're not like propagandy, they're not being bad religion or propagandy. They're being more personal now. And that's what I like about Jason Cruz and Jim Cherry as well in terms of songwriters, that they're able to be a little more personal, and they're able to showcase more emotion than other bands, and more emotion than their contemporaries. And I think the final track on side A, Ashes, is a perfect example of this. This is a slower track. It's more of a metal punk track where it's more mid-paced, but has a nice crunchy riff to it. It starts off with this kind of more jangly bass riff, but then it breaks into this heavy metal riff and gets really crunchy. And the lyrics about a girl who's in pain and she just takes drugs to just set herself free, and it's just very heartbreaking. And it's a very emotional song to close out side A. And side B continues the punk rock assault with tracks like Falter, Away, Alone, and Unclean. These four songs are fast punk ragers with more of the political, social, economic lyrics that these guys are known for, but they're just so technical that you could just tune the lyrics out and you just love these songs as songs, because they're just technically amazing tracks, and they showcase not only that these guys are a great band, they actually are masters of their instrument, and they're able to blend these styles so well together. And I think this album is one of the best showcases for that style of the pop punk and the thrashiness and the just overall just combination of all the different styles put into one. Not to say that they didn't do a good job going forward, because I think albums like Twisted by Design showcase that as well. But I feel like this album might be the best version of that fusion that they would ever do. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but the original album proper ended with Mad Mad World, and if you just had that as your closer, it's one hell of a closer. It's probably the fastest song on this album, and it's one of the shorter ones. But what I really love is just, I love the lyrics of like Mad Mad World. It's just like you're going crazy in this Mad Mad World, and it ends as it began. Just really, really speedy, fast. It has this really great solo, and the track just fades out into just nothing. But you're left feeling satisfied at the end of it. So if you had this album before, and you just had the original 13 tracks, then I'd say you'd be highly satisfied with your purchase. But if you buy this album on vinyl nowadays, you get the equally excellent closer, 14 Days. And one thing I love about this song, it's another speedy punk song, but the lyrics, again, a little bit more personal. And if you like the more personal side of Strung Out, you're gonna love this song, because I feel like it's a great way to close a record. If you wanted more of this album, they give you bonus tracks, and it's great. Not a lot of bands, not a lot of artists or labels will just slap on a bonus track. Now, as much as I love this album to death, I couldn't give it the perfect Zen just because of the fact that it's their first album. It's still great, it's still one of my favorites, but it's not my personal favorite. And to me, a perfect Zen has to be an album where it's one of my personal favorites of all time. It's probably the best or my favorite from the band. And that album, I'm gonna leave that as a surprise, but it's not this one. And I think this album is so close, but I think that their perfect Zen would come later in their career. Now when it comes to Strung Out, I feel like they're kind of in the middle. So you have bands like No Effects, and let's say Lagwagon, which are more on the more kind of juvenile, less mature side. They do have their more mature songs, and they do have their important songs, but they're kind of on the lower tier when it comes to songwriting, in my opinion. Great albums, great band, but they're a little more on the, juvenile, kind of more dumber side, if you will, of the punk rock spectrum. And you have bands like Propaganda and Bad Religion who are so clever, so smart, that you need a thesaurus to even understand what the hell they're saying. But I think bands like Strung Out, they ride that line right down the middle. Like, they have songs that are very intelligent and very wordy, like Bad Religion, and they also have songs that are more on the fun side, like a No Effects, but they don't ever go into that, they don't ever roll into that territory of the left side where it's more kind of more juvenile lyrics. They don't go that far. But they do have fun songs in their catalog that you can go back to that reminisce of a No Effects or a Lagwagon, but they don't ever go as far juvenile as those bands. But I think someone looking for a more smarter punk, but they don't want to blow their brains out with just knowledge, they can really relate to a band like Strung Out because they're very personal while also being a band with something to say. And that's very hard to do in music in general. It's hard to be a band that's very personal but also have something important to say and being able to relay that to your audience and still be relatable. So I have to give Strung Out a lot of credit for that. And I think that's why they resonate so much with me, because I love heavy punk, but also like lyrics that are a little bit more smarter, but also lyrics that I can relate to. And Strung Out definitely fit that bill. Now, if you guys want to check out this album or this band, I'll actually leave a Spotify playlist down below. That way you can check out my favorite songs from Strung Out, because they have a hell of a lot of great songs and a hell of a lot of great albums. And in my opinion, I would just check out their full discography, because out of 9 albums, they're all at least good to masterclass. Now, that being said, I hope everyone enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to click that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit that bell notification so that way you can be enlightened when I upload a new video to the channel. And I hope that everyone can keep the peace, and don't forget to keep meditating with vinyl.